Well, here we are again after a 22-hour intermission. I know it's tough to get through it all. Kind of like swimming the English Channel, be on a certain or walking along the bottom of the English Channel. But eventually, you start getting tired. You want to breathe again. You think you're never going to make it. Heck, I remember those days in between each Saturday afternoon extravaganza when I'd have to go through an entire week. I'd have to endure an entire week of abuse and insults and put-downs and getting yelled at for no reason and during my last 3 months at Pacific Northwest Baking Company. And I remember mentioning that every Saturday on the air on American Daily Review, and Constitution Radio, the 3-hour Saturday afternoon extravaganza. That boy, I finally made it to another Saturday. I tell you, that was one of the worst 3.5 months of my life. As I said many times before, money's great, money's wonderful, but it's the quality of your day-to-day life that really matters. And if you hate what you do, and you hate where you work, and you dread going to work every day, then how much you make really ceases to have a whole lot of significance. I mean, it still has some. Obviously, everyone needs an income, which I haven't had for the past 2 1/3 years almost. 2.3 years, I have not had an income. But I'll tell you what, in terms of day-to-day stress, I would, even given that I haven't had an income for over 2 years, I would have to say the last 2 1/3 years have been much less stressful. Because I have been self-employed, if on a pro bono basis, but self-employed. And now that looks like it's going to change. Not the part about being self-employed, but the part about not having an income from doing it. I will save the details for tomorrow because I gotta think about the logistics and such. I will mention this though, that this program will continue on Blog Talk Radio in some form on a weekday basis, Monday through Friday. The time might have to change, but this program will still be around on Blog Talk Radio. There's no chance of that going away. But I'll throw a little additional tidbit out there. This program may not be live for much longer. Rebroadcasts, as it were, at a different time slot. I'll leave you to contemplate what that might possibly mean until the Hump Day Baby edition of the Hard Starboard Radio Network tomorrow, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific. This, of course, for now, is live. You are listening live, as Brent Musburger used to say back when Brent Musburger was relevant. Back when he was a sportscaster, a big-time sportscaster at CBS, and then later at ABC on college fall broadcasts. Remember, he was paired up with Dick Vermeil before Dick Vermeil went back to the NFL. This is got to be back in the 90s, man. Wow, time does fly. Just ask Mrs. Hard Starboard. She tells me that all the time. Where does the time go? Oh, the time just fly by. She was saying that last night, as a matter of fact. Oh, the time flies. And I said, oh, so, because she was out all afternoon and well into the evening doing errands. And she got home and she said, oh, the time just flies. And I said, oh, so the time only flies when you're not around me. You know, the adage, time flies when you're having fun. Oh, well, you must have been out having fun then, so I guess you can only have fun when you're not around me. Or when I'm not around. Oh, no, that's not what I... Okay, well, what do you mean then? She couldn't explain it. Or chose not to. But I love her anyway. I mean, in the words of Amy Farrah Fowler, she picked me. Actually, it's more like I picked her, but she said yes, so I'm not going to complain. 27 years and 19 days ago, we tied the knot. She said yes about a year and a half before that. It's a long story, and it's not really relevant to a political talk show. But anyway, so yes, this is the Hard Starboard Radio Network at blogtalkradio.com/HSR Network. I am your host, Jasmius, your ruler, your benevolent despot, your fountain and rabbi, yes, right, fountain and rabbi of conservatism, constitutionalism, Christianity, and common sense, Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern to 3 p.m. Pacific. Guest call-in number 646-4785-068. Email address jasmius@comcast.net. Remember that, JASMIUS@comcast.net. If you want any of the 200 podcasts of Constitution Radio and Douglas V. Gibbs during its 3.5+ year run on KCAA AM 1050, because I'm the only one that's got them. I keep a copy of every broadcast I've ever been on. Internet radio, satellite radio, broadcast radio, as host, co-host, backup host, guest, period. I got a copy of it. I love podcasts, ladies and gentlemen. So I've got all that stuff for you. It is wonderful, isn't it? Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Now, the other podcasts, the other sources of podcasts, where you are right now, blogtalkradio.com/HSR Network, 8.5+ years worth await you. And 6 1/3+ years await you at blogtalkradio.com/American Daily Review for your downloading pleasure, your education, edification, enlightenment, and entertainment, and all your life's endeavors. blogtalkradio.com/American Daily Review, the home of American Daily Review, the kickoff of the 3-hour Saturday afternoon extravaganza, beginning 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific, at blogtalkradio.com/American Daily Review. Co-hosted by myself and America's Constitution Authority, fellow of the American Freedom Alliance, director of the Center for the Study of the United States Constitution, Douglas V. Gibbs. And together we go through, discuss, knock around, and analyze, break down, have fun with the All-Star Collision Big Stories of the Week. All-Star Collision, located at 522 Railroad Street in Corona, California. If you have a scratched door, a dented fender, or an entire caved-in trunk, the Patriots at All-Star Collision are the only place to go in the Gibbs pocket of Southern California. The web address, to find out who they are, what they're doing, what they're all about, what's going on, allstarci.com. The phone number to speak to a live Patriot, 951-279, I don't mean Tom Brady, 951-279-9161. All-Star Collision, the kings of wreck and roll. Oh, I didn't say the phone number at least 3 times. 951-279-9161. That's 951-279-9161 for All-Star Collision. And they bring you the All-Star Collision Big Stories of the Week every week, which go throughout the 3-hour Saturday afternoon extravaganza, which means they got to overflow for an extra hour somewhere. And that somewhere is on KMET 1490 AM, locally in the Gibbs pocket of Southern California. KMET1490am.com, globally for the local show with a global footprint. Of course, I speak of Constitution Radio with Douglas V. Gibbs, in which Mr. Gibbs, myself, and Alex Ferguson of ConservativeKennedy.org finish up the home stretch of the All-Star Collision Big Stories of the Week, as well as whatever we discuss in the opening segment. The Constitution Corner, Constitution Quest Question of the Week, Book of the Week segment, and each week it just goes so fast, just boom, and we're done. We really need more time on that program, but we got time on this program, and down to about an hour and 39 minutes of live airtime on this particular podcast. Let's see. Our YouTube channels. Yeah, youtube.com/Hard Starboard Radio, the home of the jazziest cam footage of the most listened to podcast of each week. And, of course, always, youtube.com/American Daily Review 2, the home of each 3-hour Saturday afternoon extravaganza. I'm getting ahead of the curve this week. Got both videos done, just have to upload them. Hopefully I can get one uploaded tonight and then one tomorrow, and then that'll be all done, and it'll all be up to date. And a programming reminder for this Saturday. I will not be running the board on American Daily Review this Saturday. 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific at blogtalkradio.com/American Daily Review. This will be running things. And I hope to be able to call in, because I will be away from Hard Starboard Galactic headquarters. I will be in the Rose City of Portland, Oregon. At least guest 1769 actually stuck around for long enough for it to be accurately described as minutes plural. Still not enough time to get a flavor for what we do here, but better than nothing, I guess. Better than 4 seconds or whatever it was yesterday. I will be in the Rose City in Portland, Oregon, attending my college graduation. After which we will load up her U-Haul van for the trek back up to her old stomping grounds. In other words, Hard Starboard Galactic headquarters. And so I am hoping to be able to be on the program sometime, probably in the second hour. But I just don't know. I talked about this yesterday, how the graduation ceremony is 3.5 hours, according to the website, the college website. But according to someone at the college, it won't last long, a couple of hours. So I don't know which it is, to be honest with you. And I'm always honest with you. Sometimes I may omit things, but I'm always honest in what I tell you. And so it just depends. I don't know exactly how long this graduation ceremony is going to last. I don't know if they'll have Wi-Fi there. I may have to use my cell phone to call in to American Daily Review and Constitution Radio. I don't know when intern Missius will be called up to receive her degree. Because that's the only thing I'm really interested in. I mean, I'm going down to attend what could be as long as a 3.5 hour shindig for something that will take a couple of minutes. And I don't. Now that I think about it, I don't know where once you get your degree, I don't know if they have you go and sit back down or go sit with your family. In which case, we can get the hell out of there as far as I was concerned. But I don't know when, or I don't know how long this is going to last, and I don't know when intern Missius will be called up to get her degree during that period of time. So I just don't know when I'll be able to Skype or call into either program. I think it's more likely that I'll be able to do so on Constitution Radio on KMET 1490 AM, KMET1490am.com. We'll just have to see. Because as I mentioned yesterday, there are 117 cell phone minutes that expire a week from today that I got to use off Dad's cell phone so that he'll stop asking me about it. But at any rate, so this Saturday a little bit different. I'll be on, but I won't be running American Daily Review. And then, I'll be on Constitution Radio in some way, shape, or form. At least I hope to. So we shall see how that unfolds this Saturday. But just a heads up on that. I won't be gone. I won't be absent from the programs. But I won't be present in the way that I usually am, at least as far as American Review goes. So we shall see how that unfolds. And again, more details on what I cryptically referenced earlier. In the meantime, as always, there's a stack to dive into. Well, if there's a dominant theme today, and there isn't usually, but sometimes there is, it would be Barack Obama's phony war on the Islamic State specifically, but phony war on terrorism in general. I mean, let's just say his heart is not in it, and this first item in the stack opens up that discussion. And this just reflects, I think, the times in which we live, what we've inflicted on ourselves in 2008 and 2012. Here's the headline. Hardcore ex-Gitmo jihadist calls for inquiry into abuses. Let me say that again. Hardcore ex-Gitmo jihadist calls for inquiry into abuses. Behold, ladies and gentlemen, a prominent member of the ruling class of Obamamerikistan. And the Western world as well, my friends. And never forget, this is what 62 million Americans voted for. Twice. Newsmax. The last British resident held at Guantanamo Bay says former Prime Minister Tony Blair and other senior officials should be granted legal immunity. Can you believe this? To reveal what they knew about British complicity in abuses during the so-called war on terror. That's a dead giveaway that this is an Associated Press story, isn't it? Shaker Amer, 48, was freed in October after almost 15 years at the U.S. detention facility in Cuba. Well, of course he was. He's also a Saudi violent jihadist who infiltrated Great Britain in the 90s by marrying a British infidel woman and then having learned and or gained all that he required from that op, later shared an apartment with the infamous Zacharias Moussaoui. Remember him? The jihadist that was going to radiologically dust Chicago. And Amer, who was convicted of taking part in the and also referring to Moussaoui, in addition to threatening or being intent upon radiologically dusting Chicago, was convicted of taking part in the September 11th conspiracy. And then Mr. Aker departed for Talibanistan to join al-Qaeda's looming North American offensive. But remember, it's Amer that is the injured party here. Right? Amer told ITV News, "We need to hear the truth from Blair and others, but you are not going to get the truth from these people if they are scared." Of whom? You? That I could see. You see, this illustrates another form of jihad, ladies and gentlemen. There's violent jihad, there's cultural jihad, there's jihad by immigration, there's jihad by reproduction, and then there's jihad, or political jihad, you could say. Jihad by lying, jihad by politics. Taking the much used, tried and true propaganda techniques of the Western left and turning it to their own use and advantage. In the interview broadcast Monday, Aker said he wanted an inquiry to find out the truth, but said nobody should be prosecuted because of what happened in the past. Oh, gee, that's generous of him. Amer says he was tortured by U.S. Amer says, of course he says this, he was tortured by U.S. forces in Afghanistan and Guantanamo, and that British intelligence agents knew of the abuse. Yeah. Torture. Yeah, I wish. You know, coercive interrogation, this is such... It's been debunked 6 ways from Sunday. Coercive interrogations are not torture. This guy was not harmed. He was not crippled. You know, if he had been tortured, he would not be in a position to claim that he was tortured now. And the fact that he's whinily trying to ex post facto relabel his coercive interrogation as torture tells me that he sang like a bird and wants revenge. He's simply seeking it by using the infidels' own laws and misplaced values against them. For now. You know, to draw a historical parallel, during World War II, the Nazi illegal combatants that tried to infiltrate the United States to commit sabotage and terrorism, and were quickly captured, I might add, were not chauffeured to a comfortable tropical locale where all their physical, mental, and spiritual needs were lavishly met. They were coercively interrogated and then summarily executed, which used to be the fate of illegal enemy combatants back when the United States and its Western allies were serious. The fact that this Amer farce is being not just allowed, but cultivated, hell, his being turned loose in the first place, depressingly tells us all we need to know about why the global jihad is winning the so-called war on terror. A strong horse, in short, is stronger than ever, and getting stronger with each passing day. While Zacharias Moussaoui's roommate is demanding and doubtless receiving his official inquiry into American torture, which Barack Obama will doubtless be happy to accommodate, the Islamic State is about to storm our embassy in Ankara, Turkey. Another Newsmax quote, the U.S. Embassy in Turkey says it has shifted to limited operations due to an unspecified security threat. An embassy spokeswoman in Ankara on a Monday could not provide information on the security threat, but said the limited operations would continue through Tuesday. Last week, the U.S. consulate in Istanbul warned U.S. citizens to avoid the building due to information about an imminent security threat and suspended consular services for a day. Unconfirmed Turkish news reports said the consulate was placed on alert following intelligence about possible plans by Islamic State jihadists for a suicide attack. Close quote. Oh, but fear not, my friends. I'm sure there'll be guests on the Shaker Amer show before year-end, waxing gleefully about all their grievances against the Crusaders and how we'll deserve everything we get. Maybe they'll decapitate Amer's ex-wife on camera. And as though I had choreographed it myself, folks. A third Newsmax quote, Barack Hussein Obama has vowed to push ahead with plans to close the Guantanamo Bay prison for terror suspects, despite evidence that a substantial number of former detainees have returned to the battlefield. Battlefield America. In an interview with Yahoo News that was published Monday, Obama said the strategic benefits of closing the notorious facility outweighed incidents of recidivism among former inmates. The White House itself admits that around 10% of those released from Guantanamo have resumed fighting for Islamic organizations, which lowballs that percentage shamelessly, but says it is more important to shutter a facility that has become, here we go again, that's this old canard, has become a recruiting tool for jihadists. Oh, come on. Getting captured by the enemy motivates front runners like Muslims to rush right out and get captured themselves? You know, I never have understood that motivation. Alleged motivation. I imagine it comes from left-wing nuts being such defeat fetishists themselves on everything save for their insatiable lust for their own power. The Shaker Amer sound like his passion for jihad has been diminished by his having been set free by Barack Hussein Obama? It's not how it sounds to me. Obama's comments come as Sudanese Muslim Ibrahim al-Kosi, who was released 2012, seemingly appeared in a recent video by Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula. But not to worry, folks. I'm sure he's just there to express his gushing gratitude to Barack Hussein Obama for releasing him, and to show his appreciation for persuading Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula to lay down their arms and sue for peace. He's probably throwing in a DVD set of the one's Middle East speeches as a bonus gift. It's just, how are any of us still alive? And how much longer will the global jihad give us to live? Well, if we live long enough, we might live to see illegal aliens stealing our Social Security benefits from their illegal work. Yeah. Get a load of this, folks. I mean, you know, I told myself, and I warned all of you, to pace yourself on outrage. Because the next 4, or, God help us, as it turned out, 8, or maybe longer, don't doubt me on that, It's in play, all right? That Obama might decree himself a third term and cancel the 2016 election. But I said, pace yourself for at least the next 4 years. It's going to be a nightmare. You're going to see one outrage after another. You'll be pulling your hair out, which, as I understand it, is how Professor X loses all his hair in X-Men 5 or X-Men 6 Apocalypse, in case you were wondering. But or maybe it'll be as a result of Apocalypse torturing him. I don't know. The point being, pace yourself, because you're gonna get PO'd. You're gonna get incensed on a daily basis, and I don't know how the left was able to do that for the 8 Bush 43 years, but that's just not a healthy way to live. I said, you're just gonna have to just what's the best metaphor? Gain a thick skin, perhaps. And it's kept me in good stead, although it has made me so impenetrably cynical that I don't... If I were ever prone to be an idealist, I would no longer be capable of it. I just could not do it. But I tell you, that was good advice, and so because there are stories like this every single day. And in the case of this story, illegal aliens to steal Social Security benefits from illegal work, I do mean steal, since what this is indistinguishable from identity theft. The quote comes from the dailycaller.com. Under Barack Obama's teen amnesty, DACA, illegal alien or deferred action for captured adolescents, I forget, something like that. Illegal aliens will be eligible for Social Security payments, and they'll be credited for the time they've been working illegally. In some cases, hell, in all cases. You think they're going to make any exceptions for that? I don't think so. As in using stolen Social Security numbers, which is part of the legal definition of identity theft according to the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Barack Obama's illegal, unlawful, unconstitutional executive actions, including, or according to a Congressional Research Service memo sent to the Senate Judiciary Committee and obtained by the Daily Caller, will permit illegals who qualify for Obama's program to retroactively earn Social Security payments. Under the Immigration Proclamation, foreign nationals who receive deferred action status may be eligible for retroactive work authorization, the CRS memo states. As a result, a foreign national who receives deferred action status may be able to have all of his or her Social Security covered earnings count towards qualifying for a Social Security benefit. All earnings from authorized and unauthorized work, meaning illegal work. End of quote. As in fraudulently obtained and earned. The use of your personal data, especially your Social Security number, your bank account, or credit card number, to personally profit at your expense. And my expense. Potentially. Your work for your entire... You work for your entire adult life. Pay into the system, which, while Congress was spending it all, I know, but work with me here. For all those decades, and when it's your turn to collect, too bad your bennies have been given to some illegal alien who used your Social Security number with Barack Obama's blessing. And, oh yes, you're a racist for objecting to it. Good luck dumpster diving for Alpo with those artificial hips of yours. Or should I say, buena suerte basuero buqueo para Alpo con esas caderas artificiales tuyos. Yeah, but you didn't know I was bilingual. I speak Klingon, too. Wish I could remember any at the moment. Thus does Barack Obama yet again make himself a criminal accessory to, well, he doesn't receive massive applause or standing room only crowds anymore, but no consequences for his corrupt despotism will ever be in the offing. Now will they? At least his Social Security now given to an illegal to rob him blind. It'd be pure justice, but no less poetic. Let's see here. Oh, yeah. Continuing with the theme throughout the program today, intermittently. Barack Obama's phony war on jihadism, or on the global jihad, or against the global jihad, or against terrorism, whatever you want to call it. He won't call it what it is, that's for sure. Did you know that Tashfeen Malik didn't just get a K-1 fiance visa without a second look using a phony Pakistani address, but she was helped by secret Obama social media blackout as well. Because remember, she was quite open about her passion for violent jihad on social media. I mean, it was all over her Facebook page and Twitter, whatever else. What, Instagram, Tumblr, some of these other Google Plus, whatever. She was quite open, overt, proud of being enthusiastic, passionate about the global jihad. Well, so I'm sure you're thinking, well, then how the heck did she get into the country then? Because the Obama regime refuses to let U.S. intelligence monitor social media. You know, a counter-terror strategy that you would think a fourth grader, or that a fourth grader would know to implement and put in place. Not the Obama regime. They appear to be allergic to security. Now remember, dear readers, Barack Obama is the same patak who thinks that capturing, coercively interrogating, and putting on ice violent jihadists is a recruitment magnet for them, not rolling out the red crescent carpet for them and practically offering to supply all their anti-infidel ammunition at taxpayer expense. See what I mean about pacing yourself? And it does help to have an outlet like this program where I can vent on a daily basis. I mean, you can do it. I do it on political. I vent on politicalpistachio.com every day. So it's not that I don't have any outlet, but to be able to give voice to it is oftentimes very cathartic, ladies and gentlemen. Quotas from Newsmax. You probably already anticipated that. The Department of Homeland Security, or the Commissariat of Homeland Insecurity, if you prefer, as I do, because it's more accurate, as recently as 2014, last year, upheld a secret Obama regime policy that barred officials from reviewing the social media accounts of those seeking visas, something that may have stopped San Bernardino shooter Tashfeen Malik from entering the country. Not may, by the way, would, as in would have stopped San Bernardino shooter Tashfeen Malik from entering the country. The New York Times reported that Malik, a Pakistani woman who moved to the United States with a fiancé visa in May of last year, so a little over a year and a half ago, had made little effort to hide her support of violent jihad and her desire to be a part of it. This activity was quickly uncovered by the FBI shortly after Malik and her American citizen husband, Syed Rizwan Farouk, murdered 14 people at a Christmas party in San Bernardino. Of 3 background checks conducted by immigration officials during the visa process, none uncovered Malik's activity on social media. Oh my God! How would you like to be one of the loved ones of the her and her husband's 14 victims? And then this is what you find out. That your loved one died for absolutely nothing. For no reason whatsoever, because the Obama regime is Islamophilic and a bunch of jihadi simps. God, that'd be tough to live with. Well, why was none of Malik's activity, pro-jihad activity on social media uncovered? Oh, come on, you know why. Had the authorities found the posts years ago, they might have kept her out of the country. And of course, couldn't have that, now could we? I mean, we don't have a right to our own country, but every other person on the planet outside the United States has an absolutely inalienable right to come here. We don't have any right to our own country. We don't have any right to control our borders. We don't have any right to pick and choose who actually is allowed into the country. But everyone else has an absolutely God-given, by God right to come here, regardless of our laws, regardless of our borders, regardless of what we think. But immigration officials do not routinely review social media as part of their background checks, and there is a debate inside the Commissariat of Homeland Insecurity over whether it is even appropriate to do so. Especially in a time of war when the enemy is infiltrating our country like water pouring into the Titanic after hitting the iceberg. Yeah, what need have we of enhanced security procedures now? And I gotta fix a typo here. Water pouring. That's more like it. On Monday, ABC News reported that Homeland Security Commissar Jay Johnson refused around that same time to end a secret notice. A secret Obama regime policy that prohibited officials from reviewing the social media accounts of visa applicants. Gee, how convenient that was for the 2 violent jihadists that murdered 14 infidels in San Bernardino, California. Gee, why do you think the regime kept that policy on a need-to-know basis? Perhaps because there were to become 14 pointed reasons why it was an abysmally bad idea. Whereas once the attack has taken place, they become a fait accompli we're helpless to do anything about, just as we're helpless to free ourselves from the one's Islamo-communist tyranny. Oh yes, and exposing that policy would have been Islamophobic, I suppose. During that time period, immigration officials were not allowed to use or review social media as part of the screening process. John Cohen, a former acting undercommissar at DHS for Intelligence and Analysis, said, which means, in essence, that no screening was permitted in the screening process other than that maximized the chances of importing as many violent jihadists into the U.S. as humanly possible. Other than what? Oh, yeah, there's... How did I get that word in there twice? Wow. Other than what? Okay. The question of reviewing applicants' social media accounts was a topic of debate at the DHS and was consistently opposed by the DHS Office of Civil Liberties and the Office of Privacy. This just gets better and better, doesn't it? In other words, DHS Office of Sharia Imposition and the Office of Jihadist Privacy, until they're ready to reveal themselves with a bang and a hail of bullets. Primary concern was that it would be viewed negatively if it was disclosed publicly, and there were concerns that it would be embarrassing, Cohen said in a recent interview. Now, why would they ever get the silly idea that looking the other way at the importation of avowed mass murderers might be viewed negatively by the general public? Or that Barack Hussein Obama and his regime are effectively accessories to the mass murder the Muslim Bonnie and Clyde did carry out at Obama's facilitation? It's a recurring theme, isn't it? This is the level of insanity we the people have inflicted upon ourselves, ladies and gentlemen. A president who is literally wading in the blood of his ostensible countrymen, damned proud of it, and insisting that the solution is to illegally disarm all Americans and order local law enforcement to stand down. Presumably so as to make the transition to our Islamic fundamentalist overlords' rules smoother, easier, and shorter. But you know who the caliph would still be. Or so he thinks. The only real question left is how high the Obama-ISIS death toll climbs at this point. Whether we can do anything to stop it has already been conclusively answered. Well, not enough time to get into another story before the top of the hour break, so we'll just break now. And return with hour number 2 after these faux commercial words on the Hard Starboard Radio Network on this Tuesday, December the 15th, 2015. Don't go anywhere. We're back. Hard Starboard Radio Network. Hour number 2. Now, do you remember the infamous EPA Waters of the United States rule? The one that confiscated all water in the United States by the stroke of the One's bureaucratic pen. And the rule that a federal judge in North Dakota heroically, if futilely, tried to injunct 3 months later. Well, it should come as no surprise then that the EPA couldn't even promote this rule legally. I mean, it's an illegal organization illegally promoting an illegal rule. Wow, that's brought into... Who says that the Obama regime, the Obamianists, are not overachievers, huh? From Newsmax comes the quote, the Environmental Pollution Agency. Ah, that's right, I said it! Or Mark Levin allusion of the day. Broke the law in a social media campaign intended to generate public support for a controversial rule to confiscate small streams and wetlands, congressional auditors said Monday. The EPA's campaign violated restrictions against lobbying and propaganda by federal agencies. The Government Accountability Office said in a 26-page report. The agency blitzed social media in a campaign that urged the public to submit comments in favor of the draft water rule. Yeah, well, okay, on the draft water rule, but come on, we know what they were really doing. The effort targeted at least 1.8 million people. The 1.8 million people they judged most likely to submit favorable comments. Republican Senator James Inhofe of Oklahoma said the GAO finding confirms what he has long suspected, that EPA will go to extreme lengths and even violate the law to promote its extremist environmental agenda. Now, interrupt the quote for a minute. No mention whatsoever of the imposition of any consequences. You know, sanctions, fines, jail time for this latest round of Obamianist feloniousness, which just reinforces the old notion of it being better to obtain forgiveness than permission. And this regime doesn't even seek that, such as its abject contempt for the law. And as you probably already deduced, they're not the slightest bit contrite. Resuming the Newsmax quote, the EPA said in a statement that it disagrees with the GAO's assessment, but will fulfill whatever reporting requirements are necessary after the fact. We maintain that using social media to educate the public about our work, I don't think you want to truly educate us. That's the last thing the EPA needs. Is an integral part of our mission, the agency's statement said. We use social media tools just like all organizations to stay connected and inform people across the country about our activities. Inform? That's pretty good. Inform. Oh, my goodness. Oh, yeah. That merits one of these. I never get tired of that audio clip. I think I'll take it with me. On the water rule, the agency said its social media activities simply directed users to a general web page about the Clean Water Rule and provided an internet link to education and outreach materials, emails, and presentations. In other words, directed them to environmental groups and environmental advocates, environmental extremists, and like publications. It was propaganda. which is, of course, what they refer to as informing the public. Users also were told the deadline for submitting public comments and how to do so, said spokeswoman Liz Perchia. And this is not explicit promotion? Movie trailers don't even fit that description any better. At no point did EPA encourage the public to contact Congress or any state legislature, she said. End of quote. Yeah, because you worthless animals didn't have to. In any case, I think the threshold is quite a bit lower than that. Again, I am at a loss to understand why the Obama regime so crazily promoted their forcible takeover of American water that they eviscerated yet another federal law in the process on something they were going to do regardless of what anybody else thought of it. Chalk it up to their moral supremacism, I guess. And the accompanying compulsion to be seen and acknowledged as being morally superior. And rubbing our moral inferiority rubbing our noses at our moral inferiority alleged for wanting to retain our own private property to use as we see fit in our crimson capillary bursting faces. Which is what makes the aforequoted rank condescension so blog fodder-esque, say that 3 times fast, and traffic-worthy. If they're going to screw us with our own water, in other words, or pee in our faces with our own water, we ought to at least be able to respond in digital kind until they come for our bodily fluids in the next, wave. In short, thunderclap this, you green extremist fascists. You want to find out how I'll turn over my saliva and urine. No, you don't want to find that out, boys and girls. Remember the Chinese hack attack? A massive communist Chinese looting of the U.S. Federal Office of Personnel Management. 32 million files and security investigations for current, former, and even people that the federal government didn't hire. 1/10 of the American population had their personal information stolen by Red Chinese intelligence. And it's because the Office of Personnel Management, for all intents and purposes, had no cybersecurity whatsoever. I mean, this is another one of those things. Has something like this ever happened before in American history, equivalently speaking? I sure as heck am not aware of it. I mean, there doesn't appear to be any limit to the just unprecedented, mind-boggling, outrageous, jaw-dropping, gobsmacking things that are happening these days, all because of fundamental transformation. Well, here it is 6 months later, folks. This was back in June, if you'll recall. Late June, early July. And here it is 6 months later. You would think that they would have started to rebuild, or not rebuild, build cybersecurity defenses, even though it's like closing the barn door after the horses glue. You'd think they'd be doing something. Well, guess what, ladies and gentlemen? 6 months later, the Obama Office of Personnel Management still cannot pass a security audit. 6 months later, no improvement. Atoll, as my dear old dad likes to say. Now, here's what I said on this program 6 months ago. And what I wrote at politicalpistachio.com. Dude, quote, when a White House cover-up becomes no longer tenable, and the president is a Democrat, you release the scandal piecemeal in dribs and drabs that will run under the radar of an allied media that has no desire to or interest in exposing or covering it. Whatever initial headline splash there is all there is. And by the time the true scope of the suppressed disaster comes to light, it will already be old news. It's a tried and true technique that La Clinta Nostra pioneered 20 years ago and which the Obama regime has perfected. Well, this latest development in the OPM scandal is only surprising and disappointing to anybody damn fool naive enough to believe that a president who thinks himself omniscient will ever bother learning from his ubiquitous mistakes. If they were mistakes and not deliberate and reckless endangerment of his purported countrymen. The quote comes from govhealthhit.com. The Office of Personnel Management, victim of a massive data breach that only came to light in July, in which personnel records of 32 million individuals were compromised by Red Chinese intelligence, continues to struggle to meet security requirements according to an audit by OPM's Office of Inspector General. So, OPM OIG. OMG. LOL. The audit found that the OPM has made some progress in improving security practices, but it found the agency lacking in many areas, which means they really haven't improved anything security-wise. In the wake of this security breach, OPM is finally focusing its efforts on improving its IT security posture, the report continued. Unfortunately, as indicated by the variety of findings in this audit report, OPM continues to struggle to meet many FISMA requirements. The OIG said the audit shows an overall lack of compliance that seems to permeate the agency's IT security program. Close quote. Lack of compliance with federal law is the epitome, the very essence of the Obama regime. And so is the Obama Doctrine, of which a deliberate refusal to protect any confidential information whatsoever is simply one more tentacle. Cut off one head, two more shall take its place. Hail Obama! All of which is to assert yet again that this is not incompetence, but deliberate malice aforethought. Remember that the Chi-Com hack wasn't a cyber Pearl Harbor, but had been going on for over a year at least. While at the same time, the Office of Personnel Management outsourced its IT contracts, once they belatedly decided they even needed IT services, to those same Chi-Coms. OMG. Figure in the fact that OPM Director Kathleen Arguletta refused to take the blame or assign any responsibility to anybody in her agency for the biggest enemy cyber breach ever. And can anybody claim to be even mildly startled that absolutely nothing has changed half a year later? That the culture is still the same? I mean, these miserable Obama drones are cyber nudists and utterly immune to accountability. No, I'm not referring to Anthony Weiner. They're utterly immune to accountability. They all reside within their demigod's royal protection. You know, culture in any organization is set at the top, from the top, folks. Why do you think I'm not still working at that damn bakery? Consequently, these are the reform results we have no excuse not to expect. The agency showed poor judgment by delaying a full security assessment while it migrates applications into a new technical infrastructure, the audit said. So they're repeating the same mistakes. Anybody who knows the first thing about IT, and I'm not claiming to be an expert, but anybody who knows the first thing about IT knows you build the security aspects first. They're not an afterthought. You start with that. Not the OPM. Combined with the inadequacy and non-compliance of OPM's continuous monitoring program, the audit said, we are very concerned that the agency's systems will not be protected against another attack. Among the findings, OPM has up to 23 systems that have not been subject to a thorough security controls assessment. Combined with the inadequacy and non-compliance of OPM's continuous monitoring program, we are very concerned that the agency's systems will not be protected against another attack, the OIG said. End of quote. Well, look on the bright side, folks. Look on the bright side. Since Beijing totally cleaned out the OPM servers, the old ones, there's nothing left for them to cyber plunder that they don't already have, right? I mean, other than anybody box of hair stupid enough to actually apply for any kind of federal employment. Frankly, that level of mongoloid deserves what he or she gets. Forewarned, in other words, is supposed to be forearmed. Oh, just unbelievable. Unbelievable, my friends. By the way, I defy anybody to tell me ocean not hot. And I'm not just talking about on the outside either. Seriously, you have got to listen to her NRA news commentary. Commentaries. The one that came out today, I have it posted at politicpistachio.com. The one entitled "The Godless Left." Oh my goodness! I tell you what. Two things that you could absolutely say with utter confidence about Dana Loesch. One, you wouldn't push her out of your bed. And two, you wouldn't neglect to take out the trash. She is awesome. Comprehensively inside, outside, brain, everything else. I mean, just the look on her face on the thumbnail for this video it tells you everything you... It captures everything I've just tried to describe with words. You gotta hear it. You gotta see that video, man. I'm telling you. Go to politicalpistachio.com. Look, watch this video. Listen to what Dana Loesch has to say. It's awesome. Now, this is part of the item on the stack and it's interesting. The Democrats are opting for political suicide via gun control litmus tests. Now, for years, national Democrat candidates have they've not tried to batter themselves bloody against a brick wall. You know, gun control, as I said on many occasions on this program and on American Daily Review and on Constitution Radio, gun control is one of the few issues on which the left has never been able to get traction with the American people. So, for years, Democrats have pretended, depending on the district and or state, they pretended to be tolerant of gun rights and the Second Amendment. But that apparently is a thing of the past. Now, gun control, gun confiscation is becoming as much of a litmus test as abortion and sado marriage. Now, Democrats know that they know the fundamental logic of gun control. That gun control is taking guns, the ability to defend oneself, out of the hands of law-abiding citizens, while the criminal element, and jihadists, of course, will still have their guns. Because criminals don't obey the law. That's the fundamental logic of gun control. Democrats know that. Nobody is that stupid. Okay, nobody is that stupid as to actually believe that if you pass a law saying you can't have a gun, that that the criminal element will say, gosh, darn it, what are we going to do for our guns now? I guess we're just going to have to go straight. Or that just like an active shooter sees a sign on a school that says, this is a gun-free zone. Oh, darn the left and their gun laws. Now, what are we going to do? Oh, I guess we'll just go turn in our guns and go straight. That's not how it works, and nobody's stupid enough to believe that. The Democrats know what the fundamental of gun control is. They simply don't care, ladies and gentlemen. They don't care. Being part of the criminal element themselves, they know useful, violent crime waves are for manipulating and stampeding and bulldozing the general public against their own interest to forfeit their constitutional liberties in a "we gotta do something" panic. Or, as besieged Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel put it 7 years ago, we can never let a crisis go to waste because it enables us to do things we never could have done otherwise. The problem for Democrats is that, as I have observed many times on this program, gun control, as I just alluded to, is one of the few issues they have never managed to successfully put over with the American people. I can't honestly say I understand why either, as their emotional manipulation and psych ops and playing on one deadly sin or another has been pretty much universally successful otherwise. Apparently, the fundamental logic of gun control is so easy to grasp that most Americans understand it instinctively, even without the benefit of constitutional instruction and the Founding Fathers' original intent, manifest in this instance by Amendment Number 2. But of course, the left never gives up on any of its wingnut causes. Ever. So they keep pushing gun control ever more frantically and stridently. And the harder they push for it, the more Americans they alienate and stampede and bulldoze to the nearest gun emporium, propelling the record gun sales of the past several years, really. Certainly this year. You know, if a scam isn't convincing its intended suckers, pushing it honestly and, well, pushily, isn't going to magically change their minds. Which means the next step is likely to be the figurative pulling of a gun on them to force them in the intended direction. Maybe not so figuratively. And this would be manifested by Barack Obama's long-expected Australia-style gun confiscation executive order. How that meshes up with record U.S. gun sales should make that op fascinating to watch. And in the meantime, gun control is fast becoming as hardcore a litmus test in the Democrat Party as abortion has been for decades and sotto marriage. The results of which, depending on the state and district, will be just as electorally predictable as they look. The quote is from Newsmax. Democrats who at one time enjoyed the National Rifle Association's A ratings are now starting to shift their positions, reflecting voters, not really, who almost all support more strict gun laws and while fighting against their more pro-gun control challengers. It's now a wedge issue, not just between Democrats and Republicans, but between Democrats over who can, oh, please, go for it. Go for it, Democrats. Yeah, remember the poll result we talked about yesterday? 50%. First time an outright majority has ever said, or ever opposed an assault weapons ban. The more they push for gun control, the more votes they lose. It's political suicide, but they're doing it anyway. It's now a wedge issue, not just between Democrats and Republicans, but between Democrats over who can be the strongest on this issue. Shannon Watts, founder of Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America, told Politico. Okay. Her organization is part of an extremist group, Every Town for Gun Safety, which is backed by former, here we go, New York Mayor Michael Bloomberg. You know, remember in the 2004 presidential campaign when John Kerry shuffled into that Ohio gun shop like Thurston Howell III, and what would that be a good combination? What would a good combination be? Like a combination of Thurston Howell III and Gomer Pyle, and told the proprietor, I'd like to get me a hunting rifle. Chowda, thick drawl that has to be the most witch's brew unique accent hybrid in the history of the spoken word. Remember how that was endlessly laughed at and lampooned? It was just so transparently phony and ridiculous. Or how resolutely, ostensibly, pro-gun Al Gore was 4 years before that. It's like I was alluding to at the start of this item in the stack. Democrats always used to pay lip service to being at least centrist on guns, on gun rights. Not anymore. Good times, good times. Now, Democrats who have been pro-gun and supported and even endorsed by the NRA in the past are being, well, stampeded and bulldozed against the Second Amendment for fear of being excommunicated from their own party as it lurches ever further and more radically leftward overall. Ex-Ohio Governor Ted Strickland is a prominent example. For example, in Ohio, former Governor Ted Strickland, resuming the quote from Newsmax, former Governor Ted Strickland, who once enjoyed NRA, every time I hear his name, I think of Principal Strickland in Back to the Future. Slackers! In Ohio, former Governor Ted Strickland, who once enjoyed NRA support, is being fought for the Ohio Senate primary to challenge United States Senator, Republican United States Senator Rob Portman, by Cincinnati City Councilman P.J. Sittenfield, who is pushing hard on Strickland's former embrace of guns. The former governor, who also served in the U.S. House of Representatives, has now experienced an election year conversion on the subject of guns. Dale Butland. Dale Butland? Oh, man, I'd change my name if I were he. Sittenfield's campaign spokesman told Politico, the NRA endorsed Strickland for governor over Republican John Kasich in 2010. Ladies and gentlemen. But he says his position on guns, he claims, that his position on guns changed after the Sandy Hook Elementary School shootings in 2012, and spoke in favor of the universal background check bill after that, emphasis added. In other words, another gun control bill that would have no effect on mass shooting events. Would have no effect on gun violence, gun crime, because guns are just the tools. In fact, in looking for a pic online this morning, or maybe it was yesterday, I came across a meme, and it had a lady all doubled over in a pool of her own blood, and it said, "A gun did this." No, a gun didn't do that. Somebody did that to a human being, did that to that poor woman with a gun. It could just as easily have been a machete, a datach, a batleth, a tickleth, a mechleth, a putluch, or no, a kutluch, excuse me. That's a Klingon assassin's knife. Throwing knife, in case you were wondering. You get the idea? Or a baseball bat, for that matter. Guns don't do anything. You know, there are not, and never have been, herds of wild guns roaming this great land. Flocks of guns flying through American skies. You people hear yourselves? Blaming and putting moral accountability on inanimate objects? It's people who do these things. And people who are going to use guns for illegal purposes are already criminals, are not going to obey gun laws. Every single one of these active shooting events, the shooter has gotten the gun illegally, which means that the law didn't prevent the mass murderer from getting his hands on a gun or a firearm of any kind. You don't seem to hear about these active shooter events. I'm not talking about gang wars in Texas, but these active shooter events. They've never seemed to happen in Texas. Why? I wonder why that is. California, oh yeah. Texas? Not so much. I'm sure there must be a reason. I'm sure it'll come to me. The NRA endorsed Strickland for governor over Republican John Kasich in 2010, but he says his position, okay, well, thus kissing off the NRA and a very large portion of his base support, making him correspondingly less competitive in a swing state. Remember, Ohio is a swing state, a battleground state, that has stubbornly strong gun, or a stubbornly strong gun culture. But as is also the case as left-wing nuts go further and further off the cliff ideologically, they also retreat ever deeper into the delusionalism that the American people agree with them, producing lunatic statements like the following. Democrat consultant Martha McKenna compared the opinion shift to what happened with Sodom marriage, a bogus analogy, as the courts are not inflicting gun control on the country against the people's will. I think candidates who carry A ratings from the NRA into a race but now have a more middle-of-the-road opinion on guns are representative of where our country is. That's what you think. The country is changing. Candidates have an opportunity to do that as well if they handle it the right way. Close quote. Wait for it. Wait for it. Wait for it. Boy, you talk about delusional. Yeah, the country is changing, all right. It's becoming more heavily armed. Just as it's become a lot redder at every level of government from coast to coast. Trends that Democrats seem bound and determined to exacerbate to their own doom. Well, all I can say, my Democrat friends, is lock and load. Let's see. What is how long is this item? Yeah, that long, huh? Well, I won't be able to get through the whole stack today. What we don't get through will carry over to tomorrow's program. Oh, yes. Let's see if we can cram in here. Los Angeles public schools closed this morning, over a credible jihadist threat. Now, here's the obligatory question. Have we reached the point of fear where one crank can keep 640,000 students out of school for the day? Well, here's the answer, and you knew this was coming. Yes, we have! And you know what else? Given recent events, Paris, San Bernardino, against the backdrop of the rise of the Islamic State over the past few years, this is an entirely prudent, rational, and responsible reaction. From the LA Times, an email threat sent to several Los Angeles Unified School Board members that prompted a closure of all Los Angeles Unified Schools mentioned explosive devices, assault rifles, and pistols, and was traced to an IP address in Frankfurt, Germany, according to law enforcement sources. All campuses were closed Tuesday morning after receiving what officials have called a credible threat of violence involving backpacks and packages left at campuses. Law enforcement sources also said the person who made the threats could have masked their location and that the origin is believed to be much closer than Germany. District officials have been looking into the threat since at least 10 p.m. last night, according to a school police source. The FBI and LAPD are assisting the investigation. End of quote. Well, bogus, you say? A crank, you say? Well, okay, you can take cavalier chances with the lives of Los Angeles school children if you want. And, you could make the argument that, well, if there was a real jihadist, they're not going to phone in a threat. They're just going to show up and start shooting. And that would be a legitimate point. But remember that Syed Farouk was casing schools, judging by pictures of them he had on his cell phone. That was just two. Mr. and Mrs. Farouk. We don't know they might have been lone wolves, or maybe they're part of a cell, an ISIS cell. We don't know, do we? Were the Muslim Bonnie and Clyde lone wolves or part of a jihadist cell? I mean, after all, there are no softer targets than public schools these days. The Muslim connection was made by none other than a Democrat congressman, Brad Sherman, to be specific. I have reviewed the email that was sent to a Los Angeles school board member, he said in a statement. The author claims to be a Muslim who has teamed up with local jihadists. We do not know whether these claims are true or a lie. We do not know whether this email is from a devout Muslim who supports jihadists or maybe a non-Muslim with a different agenda. The email makes relatively specific and wide-ranging threats to Los Angeles schools. We do not know whether some or all of these threats are truthful. But we cannot responsibly or sanely take the chance that the threats aren't true. Right? The only thing we know is that the email was sent by an evil person. In other words, a Muslim, more than likely. Isn't it amazing, parenthetically, that a Democrat would, 1, acknowledge the existence of genuine evil, 2, not attribute it to a conservative, Christian, or Republican, and 3, do so in even the general rhetorical vicinity of even a hypothetical Muslim? Well, I guess Brad Sherman has branded himself an Islamophobe for all time. We also know what the LA School Board has taken the strongest possible action to protect student safety. That's not a grammatically... grammar's garbled in that sentence. At any rate, kudos to the LA School Board for opting to live in the real world for a change. Pity New York City can't say the same thing, because they got their school system got a jihadist threat as well, and they just decided, that'd never happen. Remember Breslin in Russia? They didn't say the same thing, and of course, the Obama regime never does either. This is from the New York Observer, excuse me. While the importance of metadata to American counterterrorism will continue to be a hot-button topic, the disastrous effect of the Snowden affair and its political aftershocks on our intelligence agencies is not up for debate. Neither is the fact, as attested to by several Western intelligence chiefs, that Snowden's leaks have made terrorists more careful in their communications and therefore more difficult to intercept. Just as bad, several top-secret NSA programs beyond metadata that assisted counterterrorism have been downscaled since 2013 out of fears they may look bad if leaked. Before Snowden, we had a definite bias for action, explained a senior NSA official with extensive experience in counterterrorism. But now we all wonder how the White House will react if this winds up in the newspapers, which means the White House will leak it themselves. It's all legal, the official added. The lawyers have approved. And boy, do we have a lot of lawyers. But will Obama throw us under the bus again? 3, 2, 1. Yes, he will! Because his Islamo-communist extremist ideology and lust for infinite power are more important to him than the American lives it is his sacred duty to protect. That concern is widespread in American counterterrorism circles, where the Obama regime's worries about appearing Islamophobic are well known. This White House early on warned intelligence personnel about using the term Islamic terrorism, even in classified reports that would never be released to the public. Since 2009, we've opened investigations of groups we knew to be harmless, explained a Pentagon or Obamagon counterterrorism official. They were not Muslims, and we needed some balance in case the White House asked if we were profiling potential terrorists. In other words, identifying them. Because identifying jihadists is Islamophobic. At a minimum, this sort of institutionalized dysfunction at DHS and ICE needs congressional investigation, and there should be little doubt that the White House was the originator of such escapism as policy. Until this mess gets sorted out and immigrants receive a bare minimum of real security screening, we should expect more jihadists to enter our country. How many have entered since 2009 is a vexing question. Close quote. Yeah, I bet it is. And a terrifying one, too, given what weapons of mass destruction they may have brought with them. So while God knows how many jihadists like Mr. and Mrs. Farouk were waved into the country with no screening and not even a first glance, U.S. intelligence was doubtless profiling evangelical churches and Tea Party groups. You know, the real terrorists. The wonder being that the White House didn't force them to conduct law enforcement raids and drag away pastors and congregants in chains, handcuffs for trumped-up Star Chamber show trials. You know, for balance's sake. At least no American kids will perish at enemy hands in Los Angeles. Today, anyway. Mercy, mercy, Jerome Kersey. Oh, this is wonderful. I don't know. I don't know, folks. Want to hear about Obama's anti-Syrian Christian refugee blockade? You want to know the total number of Syrian Christian refugees allowed into the United States by the Obama regime in the last 4 years? Are you ready? 34. That's it. 34. That's the grand total number of Syrian Christian refugees that the Obama regime has grudgingly granted asylum in the U.S. 30 effing 4. At the same time that he's been importing tens of thousands of Muslims and plans on throwing open the borders to hundreds of thousands more. I mean, Syria, even today, has a population of just over 23 million, of which approximately 10% are Christian. That refugee acceptance proportion corresponds to 1/500,000th of the Syrian Christian population. The Syrian Muslim equivalent is at least 100-fold greater or 10 times greater than their proportion of the overall Syrian population. Remember our discussion about U.S. Christian leaders, last week or week before, about U.S. Christian leaders and groups having to lobby the Obama regime to officially designate the Islamic genocide of Christians in the Middle East as genocide? And my extreme skepticism that their efforts were anything but a pipe dream? Well, here we go. The United States, let's see, from Newsmax. The United States has let in a shockingly small number of Christian refugees from Syria, just 34, in the 4 years since a civil war broke out there and the Islamic State began its campaign of mass slaughter. The just-released figures from the State Commissariat show the paltry number accounts for only 1.6% of the 2,100 Syrian refugees the U.S. accepted in the first wave. That is disproportionately smaller than the 10% of Syrians who were Christian, the Hill reports. Many conservatives are furious at the minuscule amount of Christian Syrian refugees that have been admitted especially with the ongoing murders being conducted by the Islamic State. End of quote. Furious, but not shocked or surprised. It all gets back to fundamental transformation, ladies and gentlemen. Barack Obama is an anti-Semitic Christophobe and an Islamophile and a jihadi simp. His regime is a wholly owned subsidiary of the Muslim Brotherhood. It therefore stands to reason that if fundamental transformation is intended to be cultural as well as civic and economic, the last thing he would want is to import refugees that would make America more Christian and more peaceful. To the contrary, he wants to both communize and Islamicize our country and ratchet up the violence and chaos in concert with his disarming of we the people and emasculating and federalization of local law enforcement so as to suborn general societal breakdown to provide him with a domestic crisis of sufficient magnitude to justify declaring nationwide martial law. We all know how this process works. Can you say Operation Jade Helm? That's the big picture objective. But just on general principles, Christians are part of the wrong tribe, and Muslims are part of the right tribe in King Hussein's poisonous thinking. Therefore, the latter are worth the saving and the former deserve what they get at ISIS's hands as far as he's concerned. Given that a few hundred or even a few thousand Syrian Christians wouldn't exactly tip any demographic scales in an Islamophobic direction, only 34 such refugees, a contemptuous token, is the outrageous but entirely predictable proof of his infernal majesty's Christ-hating animus. Of course, if he ever wants to prove otherwise, there might still be Syrian brothers and sisters who have shot, immolated, beheaded, or crucified yet. Be my guest, Barry. And we'll finish off today's program with this. You want to know why we are not defeating the Islamic State? I'm not going to say losing to the Islamic State because they're not beating us. We simply aren't fighting them. And here is a classic example. We won't bomb their propaganda centers, folks. And it's for pretty much the reasons you probably already deduced. Welcome to more depressing proof of the one's anti-ISIS sitzkrieg. Title quote of the day from Newsmax. Intelligence officials are secretly mapping Islamic State media centers where the jihadists' toxic propaganda is churned out. But with most operating in civilian neighborhoods, they're off limits to U.S. airstrikes, the Washington Times reports. Oh, I have to. I'm sorry, folks. I just have to. But one analyst was aghast that any hotspots, if known, are not being destroyed. I guess, well, no, he's not in the regime. Never mind. I was going to say, he had better be polishing up and updating his resume. Obviously, if we know where they're producing the propaganda, we should be doing everything we can to destroy their facilities, said William McCants, a Brookings Institution scholar and former State Commissariat senior advisor countering Islamic jihadism. That's what he told the Washington Times. Stop the tape for a minute. Obvious to everybody but the Islamophile and jihadi simp in the White House, that is, who is loath to both take decisive unilateral action and be seen so, for fear that it would look way too much like American leadership. Given the global reach of ISIS's grisly and all too effective recruitment in terms, oh boy, that's bad. That's just not good at all. Given the global reach of ISIS's grisly and all too effective in recruitment terms online propaganda. Oh no, I guess that looked odd, but I guess that's actually correct. I would think that the eradication of ISIS's media infrastructure would be a no-brainer. And it would have been in any other time, but this one. One unnamed source tells the Times the debate over whether or not to authorize U.S. military strikes against the media centers is heated within the Obama administration because leaving them online allows officials to continue to study them. And, you know, the British have an expression, too clever by half. Haven't these officials had enough time to study ISIS's media savvy and techniques by now? I mean, not like they're at all subtle or nuanced. They're pretty much damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead, just like the rest of their organization. I mean, I don't know what they would have to study. I mean, ISIS has top flight publications, online publications, published magazines. You know, they do good work in terms of the gloss and the presentation, the production values. But the content is just Allahu Akbar. Like the old Green Bay Packers power sweep, you might say. We know they're coming, still can't stop them as far as they're concerned, and they have no reason to think otherwise. And Obama is doing absolutely nothing to disabuse them of that conviction. And I gotta put this check back where I had it. There's always this balance between needing to take action and needing to study how they operate, this source tells the Washington Times, insisting that bombing is absolutely not the only way to take a communications product offline. Yeah, perhaps. I suppose we could hack their servers. Of course, that'd be Islamophobic, wouldn't it? But it sure appears to be the only way to take their communications offline successfully. I mean, if there are other means of doing that, why have we not put them into practice? Why have we not deployed them? Why have we not used them? Why have we not attempted them? I mean, the alternative methods have quite clearly been ineffective, wouldn't you think? Wouldn't you conclude that? The fact, however, that many ISIS media centers are smack in the middle of civilian neighborhoods is a big problem for the administration, the Times reports, noting the administration has taken particular pride that U.S. airstrikes have been the most precise campaign in history in terms of minimizing civilian casualties, which is why our aircraft keep coming back without having dropped any of their bombs or fired any of their air-to-ground missiles. And that only encourages ISIS to put all their assets and infrastructure in civilian areas. Because that's what jihadists do. You want to convince them that that tactic won't work? Bomb the hell out of the civilian areas. Is that what we would prefer not to do? Of course. Obviously. But there's no such thing as clean antiseptic war. There will always be collateral damage and civilian casualties. Especially particularly when fighting an enemy like ISIS that blurs the distinction between combatant and non-combatant, and that fights illegally and dishonorably. The way to minimize them overall is to win. I was able to bridge. So, let's see, where were we? The way to minimize civilian casualties, collateral damage overall, is to win the war you're fighting and crush the enemy as quickly and efficiently as possible in order to bring the conflict to a quicker and successful conclusion. Perfect example. Dropping the atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki at the end of World War II. Now, sure, it was horrifying, it was horrific, mushroom clouds and radiation burns and just, one bomb wiping out an entire city. Yeah, that was horrifying, but you know what? That saved a lot of, not just American lives, but Japanese lives as well. The estimates for Allied casualties, mainly American, were over 1 million from a full-scale invasion of Japan. You know what the estimates for Japanese casualties were from an invasion? Try 20 million. How many Japanese died combined at Hiroshima and Nagasaki? Approximately 140,000. Now, is it tragic that 140,000 Japanese civilians had to die in that way? Of course it is. But isn't it better? Sure, I know one death is a tragedy, a million deaths is a statistic. But isn't 140,000 Japanese dead better than 20 million? I will guarantee you that Barack Obama, in Harry Truman's place, would not have dropped the atomic bombs. He would have, at most, he would have sought to give them a demonstration or something. And you know how the Japanese would have interpreted that? Weakness. They're not willing to do it. They're not willing to go as far as we are. We can still win! In war, the objective is to do it to the enemy before he does it to you. Kill him before he kills you. That's war. War is ruthless. War is vicious. You know the only kind of war that Democrats understand? Politics. They don't understand actual war. They don't understand the law of the jungle. And so, I don't know, man. This, of course, cannot be done without significant land forces to go with the airstrikes, of course. Back to the ISIS context. Which guarantees a long and inconclusive stalemate at best, an outcome we are choosing, not having forced upon us. But if we're also going to choose to neuter even what airstrikes we do purport to carry out, then what is the point? That brings us back to what I've been saying for the past year plus. This is not a real war from our side of it. Here's another redundant case in point. According to the Washington Times, the Obama administration is aiming to counter the ISIS online messaging with international partners and by pressuring U.S. social media companies to block Muslim content and links. Why do we have to have partners to hide behind? Let's lead, damn it! So sick of it. We've got to have international partners. We've got to have a coalition. They're a terrorist group! Why do we need partners? We used to be the global superpower. We don't need partners. I suppose it's nice to have them, but we don't need them. Why can't we do our own fighting? We talk about symptomatic. I tell you what, not as a good thing. And then pressuring U.S. social media companies? Once again, American companies are the real enemies in the White House's mind, not the Islamic State. Much easier to bully American companies than to fight the real enemy. And once again, it is another tactic that is guaranteed to fail, as it is akin to opening an umbrella on the ocean floor. Akin to opening an umbrella on the ocean floor. Can I just say it? But critics, including lawmakers on Capitol Hill and those familiar with the mapping project, say the effort is badly mismanaged and underfunded. Yeah, they can see what priority the regime gives to countering ISIS propaganda. Citing an October report by a British-based counterterrorism think tank, the Quilliam Foundation, the Washington Times reports there are 35 media organizational outfits that produce propaganda material from all corners of the Islamic State Caliphate. This is an exceptionally sophisticated information operation campaign, the success of which lies in the twin pillars of quality and quantity, the report said. Given this scale of dedication, negative measures like censorship are bound to fail. End of quote. I don't know. I mean, you tell me. You tell me, folks. You tell me if it's a genuine war. And there's another big reason for that failure, by the way. In Islamic culture, actions speak louder than words. It's the essence of the strong horse, weak horse paradigm. ISIS's actions are self-evident. They've conquered eastern Syria and northern and western Iraq. They set up the first Muslim caliphate in almost a century. They control more territory than Great Britain. They have emirates in Afghanistan and North Africa and East Africa. They're sending their operatives and recruits on killing sprees through the cities of Western Crusader countries at will. They're attracting fresh fighters by the tens of thousands. That's the real recruitment magnet. Success. Gitmo represents failure from the jihadist perspective. And they have, at the very least, fought the mighty, formerly mighty, United States to a standstill. And what have we done, and what are we doing? For all intents and purposes, nothing. Which means that ISIS's words are credible and powerfully influential, while ours are empty and laughable. The only way we can change that perception is by backing up our words with fearsome actions, which Barack Hussein Obama will not do. And since no situation ever remains static and the Islamic State is ascendant and has all the momentum behind it, well, draw your own conclusions. But I guarantee you, they will not be pretty. Take my words for it. That's it. Thank you. We're done. The big announcement I've been teasing the last week will be tomorrow, top of the hour, on the Hard Starboard Radio Network, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific, blogtalkradio.com/HSR Networks. See you tomorrow, folks.